2,065,687. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. That is a massively staggering view count. We're talking the kind of engagement metric that entire marketing departments literally dream about hitting over a whole year. But here's the wild part. This wasn't some massive ad campaign, it wasn't a celebrity vlog, and it absolutely wasn't a mega-budget Hollywood film trailer.
Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly did a 2D Hindi animated story rack up that many views in just 2 months? In an era where we're constantly told our attention spans are shrinking and that rapid-fire, short-form content is the only way to win the algorithm, a long-form 2D animated suspense story comes along and completely breaks the mold. We are looking at a highly specific, fiercely loyal, and honestly incredibly lucrative niche in the digital landscape.
Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we are taking a magnifying glass to a truly fascinating ecosystem, the Hindi animated horror phenomenon. Now, if you've been keeping tabs on digital media trends, you might have seen ripples of this already, but today, we're going straight to the source data to understand the actual mechanics behind these massive viral hits. We're going to unpack the themes, these super unexpected production strategies, and the demographic shift that's basically making this genre explode. So, here is our roadmap for the Explainer. First, the Hindi horror boom. Number 2, anatomy of the stories. 3, case study Skull Towns. 4, the anti-AI production formula. And finally, number 5, a mature audience shift. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The Hindi horror boom, massive viral hits. And this brilliantly illustrates that those 2 million views we just talked about, they are definitely not an anomaly. This is a sprawling ecosystem. We aren't just looking at one lucky channel striking gold. Across entirely different independent creators, we're seeing astronomical numbers. Skull Towns hit 1 million views with their video Rontas. Top Tunes Horror generated 1.2 million views on Jinzadi. Midnight Tales Hindi is sitting at nearly 1 million views for Kabra Se Wapasi. The appetite for this content is absolutely ravenous. What you really should take away from this is the sheer volume of this trend. Dozens and dozens of independent creators are capturing millions of clicks right now, and they aren't relying on generic, globalized horror tropes to do it. Instead, they're building deeply localized supernatural thrillers. They're tapping into cultural specificities that hit home for their audience, which has basically created a digital gold rush in this specific vertical.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Stories, Decoding the DNA.
So, if millions of people are clicking, what exactly is drawing them in? What's the DNA of these viral hits? Well, the answer lies heavily in the antagonists. Looking closely at the source data and the titles of these videos, you see a really fascinating roster of cultural and mythological entities. We're not talking about your run-of-the-mill zombies or vampires here. No way. We're seeing stories centered around Iblis, the Karn Pishinini, the Akshini, the Chalwa, and the Jinn. These creators are pulling directly from deep-seated South Asian folklore, regional myths, and religious texts. It's like they're taking entities that have been feared and whispered about for generations and just dragging them right into the digital age.
Which gives us a really clear definition of what this genre actually is. Hindi animated horror is a digital genre blending traditional South Asian supernatural entities and folklore with highly suspenseful, modern storytelling. It's basically the perfect marriage of ancient cultural resonance and modern digital pacing.
And you can see exactly how this builds into their content strategy. What is so brilliant here is the balance they strike. You have those ancient mythological entities we just talked about, right? But they pair them directly with modern, relatable urban legends. Take some titles from our data, like The Cursed Last Metro or Bhutia Mutton Dhaba, which translates to a haunted roadside eatery. By placing ancient terrors into incredibly mundane, everyday modern settings, like, riding the last train home or stopping for a quick bite on a rainy highway, the creators maximize the suspense because it feels so relatable. It is a highly, highly effective storytelling engine.
All right, Section 3, Case Studies Skull Towns Analyzing the Strategy.
To really get a grip on the mechanics of this operation, let's zoom in on one of the standout channels from our dataset, Skull Towns. 207,000. That is the subscriber base that Skull Towns has built up. Now, sure, in the grand scheme of the internet, there are definitely larger numbers out there, but what matters here is the density and the extreme loyalty of this audience. This is not a passive viewership. This is a highly engaged community actively hunting for long-form niche storytelling.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer velocity of their breakout hit.
The episode .gar, which means post office, was uploaded on April 17, 2026. In roughly 60 days, it didn't just get some views, it skyrocketed to over 2 million of them, along with 17,000 likes. The algorithm completely validated their approach, pushing this half-hour animated story to a massive, massive audience.
And look, this success isn't an accident. It's totally by design. If you look at Skulltown's own channel description, they explicitly lay out their focus. They aren't trying to be everything to everyone. They brand themselves as providing premium Hindi animated horror. They focus on intense supernatural mysteries and suspenseful character-driven storytelling. They know for a fact they are designing content strictly for thriller fans, and it's exactly this level of intentionality that's sending their click-through rates and retention absolutely off the charts.
Section 4. The Anti-AI Production Formula, the Human Element.
So we live in an era where digital content is getting more and more automated by the day, right? Well, here is where the story gets incredibly fascinating. While a ton of creators are jumping on generative AI to pump out content faster and cheaper, the top performers in this niche are actively rejecting it. So the crucial point is comparing the Skulltown's method to what they explicitly reject. They proudly advertise original scripts and handcrafted visuals. But most importantly, they boldly state that they use 100% original human voices and actively shun AI or bot voices. They are selling authenticity. In a sea of robotic, automated content, human craftsmanship has actually become their premium differentiator. They even outline their exact 3-step creative process right out in the open to build trust with their audience. Step 1, their team sits down and creates original scripts and storyboards from scratch. Step 2, they get into the booth to record entirely original human voiceovers, which ensures the emotion and the terror actually sound genuine. And Step 3, they handcraft the visuals using professional animation tools. They want their audience to know, without a doubt, that human hands and human minds are behind every single scare. It's this artisan approach to digital horror, and honestly, those 2 million views prove that audiences deeply, deeply value this effort.
Finally, Section 5. A mature audience shift, not just for kids. For the longest time, the prevailing wisdom was that 2D animation on the internet was mostly just for kids. You know, nursery rhymes, educational videos, toy unboxings. But listen to this direct quote from the Skulltown's disclaimer. This production is a work of fiction intended strictly for a general and mature audience, 16+ years old, and is not suitable for children. Boom! I mean, they're actively waving off the children's demographic. This completely shatters the illusion that animated digital content is only for kids. They are purposefully leaning into a mature adult demographic that craves complex, suspenseful, and seriously dark narratives. And they are executing this flawlessly from a business perspective, too. They managed to deliver incredibly atmospheric suspense, deep supernatural themes, and genuine horror for an older audience, all while rigidly adhering to community guidelines and advertiser-friendly policies. They aren't relying on extreme gore or guideline violations to get their clicks. They're relying purely on psychological suspense. This means their videos don't just get views, they remain highly monetizable. It is an incredibly sophisticated balancing act. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to end on. We've just seen that deeply localized folklore, combined with proudly handcrafted human-led animation, is absolutely crushing automated generic content in this space. So as localized folklore and handcrafted animation beat out automated content, is this hyper-local, high-craft approach the new blueprint for breaking through the noise in digital storytelling? Think about that as you look at the media you consume today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive sparked your curiosity as much as it did mine.